Hello and welcome to part 3 of ranking diagonal elevators in video games similar to the one seen in Akira. If you have not seen the first two parts of this video series, I would strongly recommend watching those first. Links are down in the description and in the card on screen. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the elevators of Final Fantasy. Now, I actually already ranked 2 Final Fantasy elevators in part 1 of this series, so I'll recap those real quick before getting into the new stuff. First, there's this elevator in Final Fantasy XIII, which I put at a solid B tier. It's a bit style over substance, but it's very well made, and it's a good archetypal example of an Akira elevator. The other one is, of course, the Juno City elevator in Final Fantasy VII. I originally put this one at a D tier, in part due to the unfitting music that plays while you write it. I've since learned that that music is tied to a specific story event and is not present at all times. I'm still not the biggest fan of this one, but with that added context, I think it deserves to be moved up to C tier. Now let's have a look at the remade version of this elevator, as seen in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where it was completely redesigned. Looking at these two side by side, I would never guess that they were intended to be the same elevator if I didn't already know. The remade version is significantly larger and a lot less yellow. They've also added a bunch of unique details to the design. There's a gate that slides closed to block the lift entrance, the control panel has moved to a semi-enclosed cockpit, and most uniquely of all, there's some sort of giant excavator arm mounted to the left side of the platform. I have no idea what practical purpose this is supposed to serve, but this ranking is largely vibes-based, and a giant mechanical arm absolutely counts towards that. Speaking of vibes, this elevator has some good ones. You've got the classic steam jets coming off the pipes, paired with a nice slow descent and some good sound design. And to top it all off, the ride down gives us a nice overhead view of a military formation. The overall atmosphere and sense of scale here are great, but not quite to the point where I'd put it at S tier. I feel pretty comfortable sticking this one in A tier though. Next up, we have Final Fantasy VIII, which has a small diagonal elevator leading down to a dock in the Fisherman's Horizon area. I'm still not a big fan of these ones where the camera cuts partway through the descent, but I will say that it's done much better here than in Final Fantasy VII. Both shots are distinct from one another, with framing that gives a clear sense of geography and scale. I find the lower shot looking up the lift from the docks to be a particularly well-composed one. Also, the fact that this elevator is outdoors in a bright sunny seaside area, rather than your typical dark industrial setting, makes it fairly unique. Unfortunately, the elevator itself is on the smaller side, and isn't really all that interesting from a design perspective. If it were larger or more noteworthy somehow, this one would probably land in B tier, but it's really just the stuff around it that makes it stand out, so I'm gonna put it in C tier. Now for the game I know you've all been waiting for me to get to, Final Fantasy XIV. This game actually has 2 diagonal elevators that I'm aware of. The first one is part of a crossover with Nier Automata, so it borrows heavily from the aesthetics of that game. As a result, this is one of the most unique-looking diagonal elevators I've seen to date. It would probably rank pretty high, if it weren't for the fact that it technically doesn't qualify per the criteria I've laid out in prior videos. This one actually starts out as a normal vertical elevator before transitioning to a diagonal motion for the majority of the time spent on it. It also appears to be suspended from an overhead rail rather than sitting atop a track, which means it's more of an oversized ski lift than an Akira elevator. I do think it's really cool, but unfortunately, I can't give this one more than an honorable mention. Of course, there is one other diagonal elevator in Final Fantasy XIV.
Say the line, Bart!
Tell me, for whom do you fight?
Yay!
Memes aside, this one has a very unique design. It has an ornate, almost steampunk sort of look to it. There are these massive decorated wheel wells that connect the platform to the guide rails, and the platform itself is huge. Not to mention there's a whole-ass boss fight that plays out during the extremely long descent this one takes, with Phase 2 taking place on another, non-inclined elevator that's right at the bottom of the first one. This whole sequence is kinda insane. Once again, I don't think the overall vibes here quite reach S tier level, but this one is A tier for sure. And that's all the diagonal elevators in the Final Fantasy series. At least that I was able to find. The comments I received on my first video gave me the impression that there were a lot more of these throughout the series, but it turns out most people only actually cited the one in Final Fantasy XIV. I do have one bonus elevator, though, that really should have been included in Part 2. The diagonal elevator in the Fallout New Vegas Lonesome Road DLC. The design of this one isn't anything too special, though I do like the use of the chain link fence as a safety barrier. The ride down has you fighting off enemies with explosions going off all around. This is probably one of the more intense diagonal elevator sequences I've seen. Overall, this one gets a B tier. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the elevators of the Armored Core series. Now, I gotta be honest here. This is a series that I've not actually played, and mecha in general is something that I've just never been able to get into. I can't say I don't see the appeal. I mean, you're watching a video about giant diagonal elevators. I do get it. But for whatever reason, no mech game or anime or anything like that has ever really managed to grab me. I think the closest thing to a mech game that I've actually beaten is Future Cop LAPD. So with that in mind, let's start by taking a look at the Akira elevator in Armored Core Project Phantasma. In many ways, this is the prototypical example for diagonal elevators in the Armored Core series. Its design is exceptionally plain, just a square metal platform with a control box and some basic texturing that slides down a square metal shaft. You don't even have to ride it. You can just jump off the front of the platform and boost all the way down to the bottom, which is much faster. This one might have been a C tier if you actually had to ride the elevator, but the fact it's so easily skipped puts it at a solid D. Moving on to Armored Core 2, and the elevator here is much the same. A bare-bones design that can be entirely skipped. This one is also a really good example of a problem I tend to see with mech games in general, which is that they do a terrible job of conveying scale. You're meant to be piloting a machine the size of a small house, but everything in this environment is scaled as though this mech were the size of a regular human. By any objective measure, this lift is absolutely massive, but there's quite literally nothing in its design or the surrounding area to indicate its scale. As a result, it ends up feeling smaller than most of the actual human-sized elevators we've seen. Another D tier. Next up is Armored Core 3. At first, this one looks to be a slight improvement. The sense of scale here is a little bit better, though still not great, and because this elevator is going up, it looks like you may have to actually ride it. Except no, because this is a level exit. You step onto the platform, and then the screen fades out to the mission results. F tier. Maybe Armored Core 4 will have a decent one then. The design of this platform is a bit better, and there's more detail overall, but this is also a PS3 game rather than a PS2 one. And for a PS3 game, the level of detail here is not all that remarkable. It's also a step backwards in that you don't even have the option to ride this one. The platform is just sitting stationary in the middle of the shaft, which you have to slide down in your mech. This one also goes in D tier. Next, we have the most recent, and by most accounts best, game in the Armored Core series, Armored Core 6. The sense of scale here is a lot better than in prior entries, but the diagonal elevator in this one has sadly not seen the same improvement. Once again, you don't even have the option to ride it, and the platform this time is just a small gray box that's been pushed off to one side of the shaft. It looks like there should maybe be a second platform on the other side, but for whatever reason there doesn't seem to be one. I honestly wouldn't blame anyone for completely missing that this elevator is even here as they blast by it, and for that reason I think it deserves to go in F tier. Finally, we have Armored Core Arena. This is a fighting game spin-off of the main Armored Core series that released on PS1. As such, there are no multi-story levels here that would prompt the inclusion of an Akira elevator, but there is one prominently featured during the opening FMV. Despite getting less than 30 seconds of screen time, this elevator clearly has more thought and effort put into it than anything we've seen from this series yet. You've got caution lights that turn on when the elevator starts up, these arms that come up out of the platform to hold the mech in place, and these clamps to the sides of the platform that retract so it can start moving. This one is really well thought out, and would be at least a B tier if it actually appeared in-game with all these details. Unfortunately, the non-interactive nature of this one means I have to knock it down to a C tier, which somehow still makes this the best diagonal elevator in this series. Overall, I found Akira elevators in the Armored Core series to be very disappointing. In just about every other example I've seen, games that have diagonal elevators use them as some sort of set piece. Even if they're not very good, there's usually clear consideration given to the design of the lift, how it fits into the environment, and how the player interacts with it. In the Armored Core games, I get the impression that diagonal elevators are treated the same as any other background asset. They're not set pieces to be meticulously designed. They're a thematically appropriate staircase substitute that can be trotted out as needed to fill in a level transition or elevation change. This difference in philosophy means I'm less confident that I've managed to find all the Akira elevators in Armored Core compared to the other series I've looked at, but I'm also fairly confident that any I may have missed will be brief and not especially noteworthy. Now to end things off on a more positive note, by taking a look at an elevator that really should have made its way into the last video on this topic. Cuphead features a diagonal elevator in one of its run-and-gun levels. The elevator ride is a bit brief, but the design of this one is fantastic. It looks like someone took part of a castle or cathedral and embedded it in a mountainside. There are some great details here, like the knife, spoon, and fork that are engraved into the sides of the platform, and the combat keeps the brief descent interesting. Overall, solid B tier. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the elevators of Resident Evil, the long-running action game series that likes to cosplay as survival horror on weekends. First up is the Resident Evil 4 Remake, which has this brief diagonal elevator ride that wasn't present in the original. It's a modest size with a pretty bare-bones design, but it is well realized enough for a high C-tier ranking. Nothing amazing, but it gets the job done. Our next elevator comes from Resident Evil Operation Racoon City, and is a lot more interesting. This elevator acts as a major set piece and has a few different things going on. It starts out as an ordinary elevator ride to the surface as part of your standard escape the underground facility bit. Then, a little ways up, the boss from the previous area comes back for round 2. After shooting him in the trademark glowing weak spot enough times, he eventually falls off the lift platform and the ascent continues. At least until the elevator stops again. Then a group of enemies starts swarming in from above and need to be fought off before the elevator can continue. When that's finally over, a series of gas pipes burst open, sending columns of flame shooting into the elevator shaft that have to be avoided as the lift makes its way up. After getting through all of that, the elevator stops yet again so that Mr. Bossman here can come back and get shot until he finally falls off the platform for a second time. Only then does the elevator finally make it to the top, right as the whole thing goes up in flames. This sequence is a lot. It takes what would be a pretty standard video game elevator ride and ratchets up the intensity to 11. This one would probably be a high C or low B tier just based on the overall design. I particularly like the umbrella logo at the center of the platform, but the addition of the, well, everything pushes it up to an A tier in my book. Our next example comes from Resident Evil 0. The platform on this one is pretty small and has a fairly basic design. Upon starting the elevator, the game transitions to a cutscene where a giant boss monster climbs up the elevator shaft and destroys it, which is then followed by a boss fight in the next area. The wrecked elevator platform is visible in the background during this fight, which is a neat detail, but the largely unimpressive lift design, paired with the brevity of this sequence and complete lack of interactivity, mean I can't really justify ranking this one higher than a D tier. Our next game is Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. This game is an on-rails light gun shooter, so it's pretty unique for a Resident Evil title. The elevator, though, is the exact same one we just saw in Resident Evil 0. Literally the exact same one. Same assets, same boss fight, same everything, except now it's in first person. The one major difference between this elevator and the original is that there's now a short gameplay sequence where you have to fight off the boss turret section style as he chases you up the elevator shaft. I'm still not overly impressed by this one, but the new gameplay edition bumps it up to a C tier for sure. Our next example comes from Resident Evil Outbreak, which has a very unique take on the Akira elevator trope. While exploring an abandoned facility, you come across a diagonal elevator that's not running, with a platform stuck halfway up the shaft. You have to climb the maintenance stairs to get up, and as you approach the platform it shifts, threatening to fall down, so you need to bail out through an air vent in the wall rather than try to climb over it. I'm a little conflicted on how to rank this one. On one hand, this elevator design is pretty unremarkable, and the fact it doesn't even run would normally result in a very low ranking. On the other hand, this scenario is extremely unique, and creating it forced the designers to consider details like maintenance access and ventilation that would normally get overlooked. It's also the only time I've seen an Akira elevator jump scare, so I'm gonna split the difference and put this one at a C tier. And finally, we have the Resident Evil 2 Remake, which features not one, but two Akira-style elevators. Well, sort of. The first one of these is much closer to a funicular railway than what I've previously defined as an Akira elevator. The game calls it a tram, so I'm going to say that it doesn't count for this list and give it an honorable mention. I'm only bringing it up because people kept linking to it in the comments of my last video. Our other elevator is of course the one from the final boss fight against Mr. X. This one starts off with a unique mechanical touch that I haven't seen on any of these before. You have to actually go into your inventory and use an item on the control panel in order to start the lift. After that, we get a cutscene of the facility coming apart as the elevator begins to descend, and the platform even gets damaged by falling debris at one point. Then Mr. X jumps down, and the main event begins. The boss fight here isn't anything too out of the ordinary for a Resident Evil game. As an Akira elevator, though, there are a lot of details here that make this one stand out, particularly the rubble that continues to fall on the platform throughout the fight. There's also all the dust and smoke effects that look amazing and seem to completely envelop the platform at times. The lighting and sound design are excellent. This one just has a lot going for it, and it's all top quality. S tier. And that's it for all the diagonal elevators in the Resident Evil series, at least that I'm aware of. But we're not done quite yet. In the last video I did on this topic, I said that I would rank the elevator in Signalis alongside the Resident Evil games if I ever did another one of these. And, well, here we are. This elevator goes in A tier. It's excellent. The atmosphere is fantastic, and I don't think you could do a much better job designing an Akira elevator with this art style. The only thing that brings this one down a tiny bit for me is that it comes right after you take a different elevator down into the mine area. Some of the most tense moments in this game come from the anxiety of entering a new, unexplored area for the first time. The fact that you get to see part of the mine and then have a safe room right before the elevator diffuses some of the tension and makes this descent less nerve-wracking than it could have otherwise been. And that's it for this video. If you want to see how the elevators in this video stack up against each other and all the ones I've previously looked at, there is a complete tier list over on my community tab. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.